Back in central New York, we find ourselves at the Great Northern Mall just outside of Syracuse. October 2019 shows us a grim tale of a dying mall, and while the mall is still open today, less than 20 businesses remain. Join me as we get a look at this Wilmorite classic. Walking in, we are met with the familiar sound of no canned music, leaving the sounds of the mall itself to come out. It only works to bring out the deteriorating conditions of this mall, as water drips from the ceiling into buckets and stores trickle away from the mall one by one. I predict, in 2021, we will finally see this mall shut its doors for the last time. Great Northern Mall traces its roots all the way back to the 70s, when Wilmorite intended to build the mall off of Route 31 by the interchange for Route 481. However, this move was blocked by the owners of the long-gone Seneca Mall off of Route 57, when they expressed concerns of overmarket competition. They filed a lawsuit under the guise of an illegal zoning change, which captured the attention of the paper The Post-Standard in 1977. The lawsuit was a byproduct of an almost cutthroat rivalry between Egan and Wilmorite. Egan had been in the area for several decades, and Wilmorite was building within proximity of all of their malls. This might shed some light on why Syracuse had 10 malls in its greater metro once upon a time. However, Egan's efforts to stop Wilmorite from encroaching any further seemed to only delay the inevitable, when Great Northern Mall was built and opened anyway in 1988. Since then, the Seneca Mall has been demalled and is little more than a strip center today. Addison Days, Hess's, Sibley's, and Sears would all jump on board for the Great Northern Mall. When signing on, Sears opted to close their old store at the Penn Can Mall, leaving it for dust. Hess's presence would likely be connected to Crown American, whom had a partnership with Wilmorite at the time. Although spearheaded by Wilmorite, the architect they had for the Great Northern Mall seemed to follow a much more basic approach to the mall interior, as it seems plain and reserved compared to Wilmorite's other properties. Early on, Addison Days would close shop in 1993, but would be replaced by a Dick's Sporting Goods over time. Hess's would change over to Chappell's in 1994, and Bon-Ton would come to take over Chappell's in 1995. As for Sibley's, they would be acquired by the May Company empire in 1990, becoming Kaufmann's, and eventually Macy's in 2006. Coming back to Bon-Ton, the store would close along with the now defunct Shoppingtown Mall in 2006, and the vacant space would be on track to be converted into a JCPenney. Wilmorite didn't seem to enjoy the direction that Great Northern Mall was going. Without the residential developments that they were expecting, they opted to sell the mall, with Macerich picking up the mall for a time. When exactly, however, I was unable to confirm. In 2015, Macerich would have defaulted on a $35 million loan payment, and ownership would be taken over by the C3 Asset Management, while management would be handled by Spinoso Real Estate. Also, before you ask, no, C3 Asset Management is not associated with Century 3 Mall. Great Northern Mall was already struggling with an empty anchor. Remember that JCPenney I mentioned earlier? Well, I kinda lied to you. It never opened. It is unknown that if it was expected to open and hit a snag, or if it was all just a powerful rumor by locals. Inline tenants were also beginning to flee the mall one by one. The mall's declining condition was made only worse by the announcement of Macy's closure in January 2017. After a liquidation sale, Macy's would finally depart in April that year. In February 2017, the mall would be sold again, and this time, ownership and management would be handed over to Kohan Retail. Kohan is another sinister name among retail ownership. Mike Kohan spoke a big game when he bought the mall, intent on transitioning from traditional tenants to community services. However, the departures continued, and the occupancy continued to drop. The bad news kept coming in, with Sears closing shop in September 2018. This would only leave Dick's Sporting Goods and the Regal Cinemas as the only anchors inside the mall. Old Navy would supplement the mall as a secondary anchor. And enter October 2019, when I came into the mall. Although some stores were decorating for Halloween, you could just tell that this mall was next in line to die, just behind Shopping Town. Enter 2020, and the mall has managed to come out the other side, open for business despite Kung Flu. However, the tale remains grim, and its final chapter is fast approaching with Regal Cinemas now closed, thanks to this virus. A local that I remain in contact with has notified me that as of the making of this video, less than 20 tenants remain inside the mall. As I've mentioned before, I do think we will be seeing this mall close for good in 2021. But we can only wait and see. It isn't often that I find a mall that I feel bad for, but Great Northern Mall did it for me. From the moment I entered the mall, I got a very somber feeling walking these halls. And this wasn't exactly a small mall either. You can probably see how these corridors just go on and on forever and ever. And yet, if you're lucky, you'll only see maybe a dozen people or so every few minutes. There are crowds that go to this mall, and more power to them for supporting the places here. but the crowds are few and far between. Nowhere near enough to keep this mall viable. It's only going to get worse for this mall, and possibly for all of us going forward, as dead malls like this only become more and more common. I'm going to sound a bit like a broken record at parts like this, but it's the million-dollar question that we need to find an answer for. What is to be done with a mall this size when all of its tenants have departed and the doors have closed? If you really care about these places, you'll be thinking about that part, and would likely try to get others to think about that. Slowly, we begin to make our way out of the mall and get a final look down this lengthy corridor. I do want to thank you for coming out to the Great Northern Mall with me. Although a relatively plain-looking mall, there is quite a bit of history behind it. And I do hope that many of the smaller businesses here are able to find a new home, and will be able to continue operations when the mall finally shuts its doors for the last time. Anyone cynical enough to wish the decimation of small businesses like them should be ashamed of themselves. Do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and ring the bell for notifications if you want to stay on top of my uploads. And please, share the video if you think others should see this mall. In addition, I can be found on Facebook, BitChute, and Minds. Granted, I don't do much over on social media, but still, it does allow me to get the word out a little more easily. I also have a Ko-fi page if you wish to donate to the channel, link in the description below. I understand if you may be having financial troubles, so I will say it again. Prioritize yourself before you donate to me, or anyone else for that matter.
And that's my cue. Crying kid. You're not the one in debt with both your parents and the bank.
Thanks for having me, Great Northern Mall. And until next time, this is Doomie Grunt wishing you and the mall and its businesses
technically you are in debt with your parents.
farewell and good luck in the raging storm.